Hi folks, Chris Martin here, and although I am still working on the final set of videos recapping the World Diplomacy Championships from Weaselmoot last year in Chicago, today I had a chance to sit down and have a chat with Brandon Fogel, who is the tournament director for Cod Con, which is the Weasel's off-year tournament. And I thought you guys might be interested in the conversation we had, how it went down, who won, who got the best country. So without any further ado, let's get Brandon on the line here. Hey Brandon, how's CodCon?
CodCon was great.
Yeah?
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was my first time running the tournament, so everything was as new to me as it could have been.
Okay.
I've only played a handful of tournaments, just to think 3, including Worlds. So it was really interesting, and it's way out in the suburbs.
Okay.
It's about a 45-minute drive from downtown without traffic. So it's a bit of a hike for the city dwellers.
Right.
And we got some of them to come out. We got a bunch of sort of suburban area people as well. And we ended up having 8 boards over 3 rounds.
Nice.
We had 3 first round. Yeah, it was okay. I was hoping for a little bit more, to be honest, but sort of 2, I think, is 2 per round is standard for this tournament. When I played in it last year, we had 9, so I think maybe I got spoiled by that. But it was great. We had 3 rounds the first, 3 boards the first round, and they were all pretty competitive. No huge scores. The biggest we had was Brian Preble with 57.
Okay. What was your scoring system?
Oh, we used the sum of squares scoring system. Straightforward sum of squares. It's popular among the Weasels. It's what we use for our club games. And people are generally used to it, and we like the style of play that it encourages, which is basically, good alliance play in the early going, then a lot of incentive to break down the alliance structure in the mid game.
Okay, great. And what kind of time were you guys using the drop dead that you use for your bar games and your house games?
Well, our bar games we don't use drop dead.
Oh, okay.
Right.
But continuous rolling clock?
Right, so we don't do that at our bar games either.
Oh,
so
okay.
For the tournament, we did. For our bar games, each table has its own timer. We have a separate order writing period. For the tournament, we had a central clock with drop-dead timing, so no order writing period. Started off with 18 minutes the first year. I think 18, 16 for the first 4 years, 17, 15 for a couple of years, and then 15, 13 after that. With that, time starts to get pretty short because the adjudications are on the clock for the next phase. And as things get more complicated, there are lots more units on the board in conflict. Those adjudications can take a little while.
Yep.
And, yeah.
All right. So I want you to kind of run down sort of what happened for me and tell us who the best country awards went to and tell us who the top 3 were. Anything else special happened? Anything else you want to talk about, right? About the tournament, yeah? So
Sure.
Why don't we start with you? You said that Brian Preble had a big board top in round 1. 57 points in sum of squares is pretty good.
That's very good. So pretty much, anything over 40 is good for sum squares. Anything over 50 is very good, and 60 plus is excellent.
Yeah.
And in a tournament like this where you have a drop round, so we had 3 rounds.
Okay.
Top two scores count. A score in the high 50s will set you up to win the tournament. If you get 2 of those, you're in very good shape.
Sure.
So in this case, Brian, who is somewhat new to the club, he's been with us for under 2 years now. And he's an interesting guy because he played diplomacy as a kid. His family had 7 kids in it. He was the oldest of 7. His parents were diplomacy enthusiasts and actually met over a game of diplomacy. I think there's more than that. I think they were shut in for a weekend because of a hurricane in Houston.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think Brian was conceived then, but I think the possibility of him was. So anyway, so he played diplomacy all his life, and he came to us, and the style of play is pretty different from family diplomacy.
Yes,
so
I imagine.
He struggled a lot. So to see him get the 50s, and he's sort of steadily improved over time as well. And he's a real thinker of the game. He loves to write after-action reports. I'm setting you up a little bit here because he scores big in the first round. Doesn't score big in round 2, and then doesn't show up the next day.
Oh, so he didn't even come out on Sunday, huh?
No, he's changing apartments, and it's the only time he could apartments. He was crushed about it because he would love nothing more to have won this tournament.
Sure.
Even with that, though, he was the clubhouse leader at the end of day 1.
Wow. Okay. Nobody combined scores better than 57 after 2 rounds.
That's right. Well, he got 3 points in the second.
Oh, okay. So nobody better than 60.
He got 3 points. And
okay.
So he was around 60, and the closest to him was last year's champion, Jake Trotta.
Okay.
Who scored, I think, 55, something like that.
Okay.
No, 50. That's right, 53.
All right.
Jake was eliminated in his first game.
Uh-huh.
And he largely blamed me for that.
As the tournament director, that's unusual. You don't usually blame the TD for being eliminated on the board.
So he actually has a lot of entertaining things to say about this game. His after-action report is already up on the website.
Okay.
And
which is www.windycityweasels.org.
That's right. That's a general website. The results for this tournament can be found at CodCon.windycityweasels.org.
Okay.
And we have all of the board picks from every round for every game posted there as well. So if you like to sift through that sort of thing, and there is one game which I'll get to at the end that's worth a look.
Okay.
Something spectacular happened in round 3. So so Jake. So this sort of gets to one of the interesting lessons or experiences that I had with running this tournament for the first time, and that's that I come to this not as a blank slate, but as somebody who's active in the club and has developed some competitive rivalries with some of these guys. And Jake and I entered the club at the same time, and we definitely are friendly rivals, but rivals nonetheless.
Yeah.
So one of the things I did at the beginning of the tournament was, I announced to everybody that he was the defending champion, and I announced also some special rules designed to get laughs. That was it. But one of the special rules was that Jake Trotta, defending champion, had to be eliminated on every board that he played, or nobody's scores would count. So, designed to get a laugh. Right?
Yeah, as a player who occasionally gets a target hung on his back by tournament directors, I can see as how that's it's flattering, and at the same time you want to strangle the guy. I sympathize with you, Jake. I'm going to tell you that.
I totally understand too. I mean, I think now that I've gotten that out of my system, maybe I won't quite do the same thing next time.
All right.
Unless he beats me for the club championship, and then all bets are off.
Absolutely. I mean, it's part of the fun of the game is that we know each other, and some people complain about that, and I think there's a conversation to be had about it maybe, but I don't think that's outside the bounds of normal tournament director behavior.
Well, what was really interesting for me, and I'll get back to the tournament results in a second, what was really interesting for me was that I found it very hard not to comment on the games. I refrained.
Yeah.
But I found really wanting to. Especially with players, especially when there were players that I knew well competing against players that I knew didn't know them well.
Right.
So, as a competitive person who likes to observe people, and also felt a little bit of, I'll be honest, envy at not being able to play.
Yeah.
Felt strong urges to say things. And I, for the most part, kept my mouth shut. I think Jake would probably pick out 1 or 2 comments that he wouldn't have minded me taking back. And I think he might be justified in that. So
that maintaining that neutrality, right? That's the key, right? Here in DC, Peter Jurgen does the tournament directing, and there are very few players who are more competitive about the game of diplomacy than Peter. But over the years as a tournament director, I gotta tell you, he plays it dead straight. He doesn't comment. He just says, he gives his ruling. He doesn't make the snark. It's very hard for me, also in the ones that I've tournament directed, not to be like, oh, come on, this is ridiculous. You guys are calling for a draw? Fine, I'll take the vote. And that can have an influence on the game. You kind of want to,
even that,
right.
Even that small thing, the tone with which you approach that. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And I had to make some rulings at various times, right?
Like you do.
That definitely impacted the games.
Sure.
And with Jake in particular, there was one that definitely impacted the second game, where he was rolling to a big board top, and he was Turkey. He had stabbed his ally Russia, and written an army to go from Rum to Sev, but the V
was
mistake.
RV, yeah.
The V was terribly written, and it looked a lot like it looked much more like a badly written R than a badly written V. And there was no support order from the Black Sea or anywhere else to that I could use. So I had to send it to Serbia, and he ended up with a big board top anyway. 53 points.
Yeah.
And he feels like maybe that cost him a shot at a solo.
Yeah, that little tempo, right? As your Turkey, right? You send that unit back. That unit goes to Sev, or I guess Galicia would be a bigger deal. But that's moving forward. That's tough, man. But yeah, hey.
Well, he certainly would have had Moscow. I mean, it cost him a dot. There's no question about that.
Well,
because Russia trusted him implicitly. Russia, by the way, happened to be Brian Crable in that game.
Okay. Well, I think the lesson there is, always write out a little more than 3 letters. It's much harder to make a mistake with that, right? Because Serbia and Sevastopol don't look anything like each other if you write 5 letters. So that's we all do it. It's we got in the habit, I think, from the internet games, right? For me, it's a holdover from judge games, when you would have a 3-letter abbreviation that the judges, and that's all they understood for the games, and that kind of worked its way into the North American face-to-face hobby, that you just abbreviate with 3 letters.
I think there's something just cool about saying Sev as well. Like,
that's true.
That's
right.
We just got the habit of that, right?
Yeah.
Con, Sev, Hank.
Yep.
So I think that plays into it. But I mean, what was just from I like to be somebody who takes a lot of pride in my sense of integrity.
Sure.
So the idea that I might influence or that my judgments might be influenced by rivalries was something that actually bothered me. And once I realized that even my small comments might have an impact, I tried really hard to stop doing that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And anybody who's a tournament director out there, you really have to put that on the shelf while you're tournament directing, right?
Yep. And it's hard to do. I guess that's the one thing that I would say here, is that you have to consciously work at doing it.
Okay.
So
end of round 2, it's Brian in first with about 60, and Jake in second with 53, 51, 53, somewhere like that, and then maybe a bunch of people in the 40s.
Yes. And one of them, let me see here. One of them, actually, Jim O'Kelly was up around 55 as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I was wrong. So Jake was at 57.3, Brian was at 60.1, and Jim O'Kelly was right behind them at 56.
Okay, so it's a really tight 1, 2, 3.
It was, but Jim's bigger score was 43.6. So, because you're doing the drop round...
one of those is going to go if he gets a better result. And that's what we call foreshadowing. What happened in round 3?
So round 3, we had some late cancellations in the morning. We had 14 exactly going in. We had a couple of late cancellations. So we were down to 12.
Oh.
And there were a couple options for me as tournament director with that. I had 3 players willing to play 2 boards at once.
Wow.
Which was interesting. I had the option of playing a board myself with a score that wouldn't count.
Sure.
And while I was figuring out what to do, one of the 3 agreed to not play the 2 boards, that he would let the other 2. And so I decided to let those 2 play the 2 boards, rather than let one of them play twice and have me play one. And I really wasn't sure about what to do with that.
That's tough.
I thought, it's going to influence, if people are playing 2 boards, it's going to affect them, it's going to affect how those boards work out. But in retrospect, I'm really glad that I didn't play, because there were some difficult judgments that had to be made on both boards, and I would not have been able to make them independently were I on the board.
I think what I've seen happen in the past is if the tournament director is playing on a board, he has to designate somebody else from a different board to make any rulings on that board. And if you're playing on 2 boards and those are the only 2 boards in the tournament, then you have to have somebody else from either board. That's a tough spot. Yeah, it's probably good that you didn't play.
That would have been very complicated too, because the person you would designate would have to be somebody who does not have a vested interest in the outcome.
Right.
And because the top score was 60, every person there was in play.
Sure.
For the tournament champion.
Absolutely.
You know, a score above 60 are not unheard of. And so if somebody with no score the previous day gotten 60 plus, and the leaders all face planted, I mean, that's a victory right there.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
So as it happens, one of the people who was wanting to play both boards was Jake Trotter. Defending champion, you know, in the hunt for the tournament victory, and also sort of general provocateur.
Right.
I wonder if I don't know if he regrets playing 2 boards or not. He certainly was really eager to.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a mark of being respected in the hobby, is that you're like, yeah, I can play 2 boards. I got this. I see, you know, it's the hobby veterans and stalwarts who stand up and say, okay, I'll take this. I'm not going to play as well on 2 boards as I would on 1, but I can do it, right?
It's definitely a confident thing to do.
That's right. Who was the other one?
John Gramilo.
All right. John.
Is a very strong player, has a tendency to either blow up or self-destruct.
Right.
Blow up.
Go big or go home, right? 8th place going into the finals at Worlds last year. Yeah, with a solo, right? And
so he soloed, I think, in the first round, and then he got zeros the next 3 rounds.
Yeah.
I mean, that's classic John Gramilo. And he's a fun guy to have around, but he's incredibly unpredictable. I collected, I walked around and listened to what people were saying and wrote down any quote that was memorable.
Right.
And there were a few from him, which it can be found on our results website.
Okay.
I would read them out, but they're both...
I'll put a link in there to that. Okay. Yeah, in the video. Racing.
Colorful.
Okay.
So playing both boards, they both had a chance to greatly influence what was going to happen, for the outcome of the tournament.
Okay. As tournament director, how did you set up those boards? Did you set them so they would be in different theaters on both boards, like make one England and make one Turkey on one board, and then just flip it on the other? Or did you? What'd you do?
It was very tricky because for a number of reasons. One, I had never seeded boards before. 2, the software that was supposed to figure out all of the different conflicts crashed while I was trying to do it, and would not work anymore. So I quickly tried to do it all by hand, and I did some random stuff to try to divide the 2 boards. I did try to, as best I could, keep people from playing the same country twice that they had played the previous day. And I did try, I will be honest, I did try to balance the boards in some way, competitively.
That's a tough call, too. That's another tournament director thing where you got to be like, you're using your judgment, and the players are going to be like, hey, if you'd set me up with a different board, I could have won this thing. And you're going to be like, somebody's got to make these decisions, right? That's on you.
Yeah. And if somebody got a draw, if a very skilled player got a draw that was with players who were not as experienced, and that player walked away with it, I would be open to criticism for that.
Sure.
On the other hand, that doesn't always work out, right? The experienced player doesn't always
you've got 12 people, right? There's only so many combinations that you can set them up in, right? Okay.
So with John and Jake for both playing 2 boards, I didn't put them in separate theaters on both boards. I think on one they were Russia and Germany, which is
okay, together
but not. I think in the other board I did separate them, Austria and England.
Okay.
I definitely wanted to mix it up. One thing I didn't think about too much was how difficult it would be to play which countries in combination. Whether England and Russia would be really hard to play on different boards, or Austria and Germany, something like that. And I honestly don't even know. I mean, some more experienced board seater can tell me that.
Yeah, that's something that I think we want to maybe have some conversations amongst some tournament directors, people who've been doing it for a long time, like David Hood, and really see what, they recommend. So, all right. So let's we're at 20 minutes now, and I want to keep this under 20. I know we could just go on like this, right? So, what happened in round 3?
So round 3, let me see if I can do this as briefly as I can. Jim O'Kelly who was our club founder, probably the strongest player in the club, certainly the most accomplished player in the club, was Turkey on a board with another old veteran, Kevin O'Kelly, in no relation, in Russia.
Okay.
Jake was in Austria. Basically, the three of them...
no worries. We can fix that in post.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so you got the O'Kellys as an RT, with Trotta, who's on 2 boards in Austria.
That's right, and Christian Klein in Italy. Christian Klein is
another veteran,
a player in the local hobby. Extremely strong tactician. He's a bit like Ramila in that it's boom or bust.
Okay.
And he's the kind of player who will turn on you if the situation calls for it.
We all are at the end of the day.
That's true.
But okay.
It's true, but Christian does it with a bit more relish than most.
Fair.
And I don't think he will find any fault or criticism in me describing him that way.
Okay. So what was the other board like?
The other board had let's see. The players with big scores from the previous day on that board were Matt Sundstrom, who is another long time and very accomplished weasel. He actually won the tournament 3 times before.
Right.
And he had a decent score from the day before, like about 30 from the day before.
So he's definitely in the hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. So with a good score, he definitely could have placed there. Brian Sheldon, longtime pit kisser, and
member of New York 212 local originally, actually.
Okay. So yeah, way back.
Yes.
So he was on the other board, and obviously Jake and John were as well. That board ended up being dominated by Don Glass, who's a long-time weasel. This is 48.
There you go.
And he didn't have a score from he had 1-0 from the day before, so he didn't have anything to match it with.
Okay.
So he needed, to score even bigger and have the other board implode.
Right.
And the other board did implode, but it imploded in Jim O'Kelly's favor. So brief rundown of that. The 3 Easterners ganged up on Austria, took them apart very quickly.
Just make it simple for you, Jake. You just go play on that other board. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Jake wanted to try to tank Jim's game, knowing that Jim was the closest to him.
Sure.
He gave a lot of dots to Kevin O'Kelly, who grew very big, and then was stabbed by Jim. And then Kevin and Christian were unable to cooperate in fighting Jim as Jim grew. And Kevin essentially janissaried for Jim as he was eating his dots up from behind.
Wow. Yeah, there you go.
And at that point, it was clear that Jim was going to win the tournament. He could not be pushed back.
Right.
Although France and Italy, France played by a new weasel, Chad Carson, and Italy, Christian Klein, teamed up for briefest of moments and had a chance to push Jim back.
Like around Munich?
No, this was actually in the Balkans. France had an army to Galicia, and they had a chance to take Serbia away. Jim had uncharacteristically stretched his forces out, not anticipating, I think, the strength of the combined attack.
Okay.
And I don't know if there was a misorder or if Chad and Christian didn't get on the same page for it, but they didn't. Jim repelled them both, and then Christian, in Christian's inimitable way, sent all of his forces west and threw the solo.
Rolled over. Everybody else gets a 0.
Yep.
All right.
But I think every single person on the board did something to help Jim get a solo, except for Germany, played by Ben DePaula.
Okay. And Jake, who was trying to tank him, right, but then was eliminated, right?
Yeah, Jake was gone by 0-2.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. Ouch. Yeah, that's brutal.
So Jim took the 7th solo in tournament history. Took the tournament, obviously, with that. I'll run down our list. Jake Trotta finished in second. He did score enough on the other board to pass Cravel, who finished in third. Do you want the top 7? Or
let's just go with the top 3 and then the best country awards.
Okay.
Well,
so,
obviously, best turkey. No surprise, Jim O'Kelly. Right?
That's right. Austria was John Gomila. England was Don Glass.
Okay.
Who won the award.
His big 48 point.
That's right. It turns out actually there was in England the day before that had scored a little higher. I misread the chart when I was doing it, when I was looking at this. So by 0.44 points, David Hafner, who was a high school student, took the highest score. I ended up deciding to have co-best England's for that.
Okay.
For that.
Point.
Because the game on Sunday was shorter than it should have been because of the snafus in the morning. They
got a later start. Okay, fair enough. That's another one of those calls you make as a tournament director, right?
Yeah, as I'm finding out.
All right, England, then France?
Our France is a very special best France. This was taken with 12.245 points.
Wow, France got shellacked.
France, our France was the lowest scoring country by average of the whole tournament.
Wow.
And that was Brian Sheldon, that rocking 12.245 points.
Well, all right.
Germany was Matt Sundstrom with 28.9 points. Interestingly, 3 of those came from one board in the first round. The Austria, England, and Germany.
Wow.
Which is also unusual.
Okay.
Italy was Brad Harrington, who's a local, 20.3 points. And Russia was Brian Cravel's 57-pointer from the first round.
Wow. Well, it sounds like it was an awesome event. What's next up for you Weasels, now that CodCon is behind you?
So our next tournament is our annual major tournament, which is the Weasel Moot. That takes place in June, from the 23rd to the 25th. And details about that can be found at moot.windycityweasels.org.
Okay. Well, Brandon, thank you very much. We're a little bit over here. So I'm just going to say congratulations on running a great event. Will you be tournament director for the Moot? Or will you be playing?
I will be tournament director for the Moot.
All right. Well, I'm sure you'll be taking this hard-won experience and putting it to use there on the bigger stage. All right? That's what you got to learn these things, and the only way to learn it is by doing it sometimes. All right?
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing you and everyone else out there
All
in
right.
Chicago.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, and I'll catch up with you soon. There you go. Great to hear from Brandon, and really looking forward to the Moot, the best diplomacy tournament in 2017 that will be held at a bowling alley. You heard it here first. Next up, I'm going to be sitting down to chat with Siobhan Nolan, who ran the Badass Whipping Tournament out in San Jose a couple weeks ago. We'll get that queued up, and I am still working on that recap. Got 6 of the 7 players from the World Diplomacy Championships top board to sit down with me while we're out there at whipping, but I got 90 minutes of footage to knock through there. All right, that's it for me. If you like this video, like the video. If you've got something you want to say, go ahead and comment. If you really like what I'm doing, you can go ahead and support me on Patreon right here. Thanks, guys. Until next time, I'm Chris Martin, and I'll stab you soon.